Yeah, good evening. Yeah, you are welcome to the training tonight. Tonight, we're going to be looking at introduction to security testing. And in this topic, the learning objectives, you'll be able to understand the purpose and importance of security testing, how it can be achieved. You'll also be able to identify the different aspects of security testing as part of the software development lifecycle, tools for security testing, interactive session. So this is where we'll have some examples, the way you would actually perform some security tests. So quickly, what is security testing? Um, my definition is that it is a process where software is verified if it protects data confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And my focus is on software in this case because we have software testers on this program, and we also want them to expand their knowledge within the security space. And how is security testing? How is it done? How does it verify that our software's data is in line with the CIA triad? By identifying and addressing vulnerabilities. And the way security testing is achieved, a lot of process goes into it as well, because it needs to be planned. The same way, I don't know if you've been to any of the software testing training class. Security testing needs to be planned because it requires that you, as a tester, as a security tester, you are able to understand what the requirements is. Ordinarily building a software application, there must be a requirement. All right, there must be a requirement that says, okay, we want to solve this problem, and this is what we want the software to do. Or we've been doing this process manually. However, we want to move it to a digital process. So there must be a requirement. The same way with security testing, as a security analyst, as a security tester, you must be able to identify the security requirements. And the requirements should usually be based on what the need of the business is and what the regulatory body expects from, from, from the organization. For example, if you are working in a financial services organization, the business is solving a solution in that area within the finance domain. However, don't forget that within the financial services domain, they are governed by regulations, the FCA, for example, and they must, whatever they do, must be in compliance. And if you have an application, for example, that takes payments, people's payments, of course, you would also, or you do money transfers and all those kind of service, you render all those kind of services that that are falls within a risk category within the financial services. You must also ensure that whatever your security requirement says, you are also you are also in the position, putting yourself in a position where you are able to align with what compliance required. For example, within the security space, you'll be looking at the compliance requirement for PCI DSS. So those are the kind of things you need to understand. There are different compliance requirements that are required. And also, you want to be able to identify vulnerabilities. What are vulnerabilities? The weaknesses in the system. You can achieve that by using a tool. You can achieve that even if you're not using a tool. It all comes with experience. If you give yourself the opportunity, there are lots of educational platforms out there where you can actually, explore and exploit, to apply your understanding of how to identify weaknesses in an application, you know, and ethically, yeah, of course you have to do that ethically. That is where um, your penetration testing comes in. Okay, you can see that penetration testing falls within security testing. A lot of people tend to just assume that anything pen test, oh, that's all what security testing is about. No, that is not it. It's good to get that clarification and you can educate other people. Also, within this vulnerability part, I just want to touch on something. Sometimes when you're building an application, um, excuse me, you have a front end, you have a back end. Sometimes some applications, you don't really have to write a lot of code. What happens in the back end are configurations. Okay, so if a configuration is not properly done, for example, on the server or on the database and firewalls, I'm sure you know that that can create a weakness, that it would definitely create a weakness in the application, and hackers can exploit that. Moving on to validating security controls. So this is where you, as a security tester, you are verifying the authentication and authorization of the authentication and authorization processes that are in place to prevent any unauthorized access. Say, for example, you are aware of the password policies. You're aware of the password policies. Oh, the character length 8 must include numbers, must include must not include any kind of character, just numbers and letters. So what you're doing in this space, when you're validating security controls, you are checking that requirement. That password policy is a requirement. You understand? That password policy is saying this is what it's the kind of password you should put in place. So that is a requirement. So you try to input the right data, um, the in the right data, that would be the valid data, but invalid data, to validate if that password policy control that has been put in place, if it is strong or weak. So that's just a simple explanation of that. And of course, what all the tasks that you do around security testing, you would also need to report. You document the vulnerabilities that you've identified. You document the severity, the severity level. You document potential impact, what could go wrong with this vulnerability that you've identified. And of course, you can also give a recommendation. So that's what we call a remediation recommendation. And for continuous testing, this is where security tests that is some of the manual tests that we're going to do tonight, you can actually automate them, okay, as a tester. You can write automation tests for them. And of course, you know that there are processes involved before you also perform security tests. You need to go through an approval process. The application needs to be, it needs to be scoped, get the understanding of what is going to be tested and what is not going to be tested, so that you are working in compliance and you're not breaking any law. You can't pick up any website and say, oh, I'm going to security, I want to practice how to test this. But the testers sometimes, for example, they could actually run some automated test on and go on Google, just open a Google page, but you can't actually do that. It is legally it is unethical anyway. So those are the 6 ways that you could actually perform a security test. So as you can see from that example, that list there, penetration testing is just one out of all of what security testing is about. So why is it essential in software development lifecycle? Why do you think security testing is essential in the software development lifecycle? Why? Yeah, you can unmute and speak. Anyone? Okay. The major why is to be able to identify any weakness. That's the major, any vulnerability in the application early. In fact, developers they are always, it's best practice for them to ensure that the codes that they write are secure codes. Otherwise, if codes are being tested and testers are finding a lot of vulnerabilities in the system, it doesn't give the stakeholders, it doesn't give the business any confidence. In fact, all the functionalities might be working properly, but the moment the testers are able to identify, for example, if you are able to identify passwords in the code, that means the developer is hard coding is putting hard coded elements and components in the application, which is totally wrong. Sometimes you go into the developers tool when you right click on your web page, and the data that you're putting into your, for example, username and password, you're seeing them in the back end. It is totally wrong. So that is not supposed to happen. So security testing is essential because it exposes any sort of vulnerability in the application. So that is why it is essential. Now let's quickly look at the key security testing areas. So according to the common body of knowledge for CSSLP, that is the certification that you get as a secure software professional. All right. So there are 9 key security testing areas. I did not develop this or create this. So this is from a common body of knowledge, and that is certification close to the highest certification you could get as a security analyst, SSP. we have the static analysis. And what this does, as you can see the word static, that is reviewing the source code for vulnerabilities. Even as security analysts may not have access to do that directly, but software testers will possibly have access to review source code. That is why if you are within the software development domain, you would find that the developers have a code review process in place. That is one of the things that they do, and which is a best practice activity or task. The security code review is really important. And at that point, the application is not running. They are reviewing the code step by step. And what are they looking for? Source code vulnerabilities, for example, hard-coded password, which I mentioned earlier. Then we have dynamic analysis. So this is where the application is running, all right, and it's being analyzed for security flaws. So what happens is there are different tools that can be used. I know I've worked on a project before where all the development team in there, the business mandated that they want to they mandated them to use SonarQube. So I even had to learn how to install and configure SonarQube even within an automation test project. All right, but most of the time, if it's not something that you're exposed to, you could always get the help of a developer or a colleague, you know, so that you can, or a colleague that has created a run book for it, then try it on your own and build it into the application. So it's a very good practice, and this is where dynamic analysis um, happens. So what happens is that when that application goes through that process, it will highlight the areas within the code where there are security flaws. It doesn't miss it. And it will also tell you, give you the metrics and say, oh, 80% of this analysis confirms that the code that the developer has written is secure. So the remaining 20% will be highlighted, and then the developer can go back to fix that. And guess what? They would not allow them to push their code into the into the main branch of the source code and push it to life. That's not going to happen. So all of these are really important as a good knowledge base for security testers and security analysts. Then we now have the penetration testing. Of course, we know that this simulates the real world attacks where hackers, where security analysts would actually try to reinvent the steps or create or just put themselves in the in the character of a hacker to exploit weaknesses in the system. So they exploit the vulnerability, they try to understand the impact, and of course they give or recommend remediation steps. Remediation steps are what are the fixes that needs to happen, or the risk analysis and what needs to be fixed immediately, and every other thing that would ensure that that weakness is not promoted to production. Okay, and we have the fuzz testing. This is where a user inputs unexpected data to test the system's stability. So, for example, you're expecting to input a username that works, all right, and then you type in a random character in the username field, something like that. That's not the kind of data that the system is expecting. So it could throw an error or return a validation statement or error message for if the depending on the kind of data that's been, excuse me, or on the kind of data that has been introduced or typed into that field. Then we have the vulnerability scanning. You probably would have heard about uh, scanning the, the scanning tools. There are loads of them out there. There are loads of scanning tools out there. And all you just need to do is to put the URL into the field and just run it. You can have a light scan, you can have a medium scan, you can have a deep scan, and all of these are they are useful to assess the vulnerability of an application. And just for you to know, vulnerability scanning happens before, is best practice, and vulnerability scanning happens before penetration testing. So, because vulnerability tools will help you identify the vulnerabilities are present in the software application. So the understanding of that would help to the developers to fix whatever defect or weakness that has been identified before confirming, and the tester needs to retest that as well before confirming that it is okay for penetration testing to happen. As a matter of fact, if you as an organization hand over your application for penetration testing, trust me, when they send their scoping document, they would tell you that you need to, that they would be running a vulnerability scan before they do the actual penetration test, because they are two different things. One comes before the other. And if you just hand over your application straight away to penetration testers, it costs the organization more money. So as a security analyst, all some of this information, because you know them, you are able to advise your organization when they want to take steps to pen test their applications. And of course, as we have, as much as we have functional regression testing, we also have security regression testing. For example, if a web application firewall has been configured, all right, for the system configured, of course, what does a web application firewall does? Uh, it's it's a tool that monitor and analyze traffic. It's a protection tool. It protects web application. A lot of companies use it. In fact, OWASP recommends that organizations should use the web application firewall. It's not like it's a optimal security tool, but it, in real time, it gives protection against any sort of malicious activities that could happen or potentially happen to a software application. And we also have, so whenever we have that installed for configured, for example, and or maybe changes have been made, because for firewalls are configured based on different rules. And let's say, for example, a change has been made to the configuration in the firewall, which is different from the original configuration. So anything that's introduced a change to an application, it is important that you as a tester, as a security tester, you test the change and you do a regression testing. What regression testing does is to verify that these changes have not reintroduced security issues. So it's the same concept with functional regression testing. And we also have the threat modeling, where this is where um, we are able to identify potential risk and vulnerabilities during the design phase. It is really, really, it's a very important part of the of security testing. Initially I mentioned understanding the security requirements. So it's from the security requirements that things like when the security testers, the architects, engineers, when they are defining all of this at the design phase for an application, for example, let's say it's a very complex application, they are able to identify any potential risk through that requirements gathering and understand the scoping of the requirements just before the system is built. And it also informs their decision along the way, where at what point the security controls or defenses needs to be introduced. It also informs the kind of technology they use as well. Okay. Then we also have testing for compliance. All right. I mentioned earlier as well PCI DSS. So security testing not only identify weaknesses, it also ensures that the application meets compliance standards. So we have GDPR, PCI DSS there written as an example. And we also have interactive application security testing. So this is the real-time testing during runtime to identify vulnerability. And this is the kind of testing that you would actually do manually, for example. Now, there are different kinds of tools. The tools are not limited to these, but I can explain just what you know, some of the tools here. So we have tools that fall within the first vulnerable applications. The first category in there to test vulnerable applications. They are all those examples there, DVW, G-Shop, WebGoat, they're all, you'll find them on learning platforms. They are, when you go on those learning platforms, they are open source. You can use them to, to test and exploit and get more experience with using um, security tools. Also, we have scanning tools. I'm sure you would have heard about Nessus. Nessus is one of the tools by Tenable. You have OpenVerse, we have Nikto, and these, I think you might be able to check and you said the 30-day trials for Nessus. It's really also simple to understand. It's a scanning tool. You have the static code analysis. I mentioned SonarQube earlier. I have an experience using that. And Bandit, I don't know of Bandit. Then we have penetration testing, Bob Street, Metasploit. I'll tell you that there are lots of tools out there that can be used to, that you can actually use and exploit an application's security vulnerabilities. And some of the vulnerability scanning tools actually will also do some automated pen testing. But you can only do that on applications where you've gotten an approval to go ahead and run such on it. Or those open source tools out there. In fact, the moment you put that URL in, even though those tools are free and all that, that question box will pop up and say, are you authorized to run this test? You understand? So let's be aware. And we have the traffic analysis, the network traffic analysis. We've seen that with Wireshark. In fact, I think Fiddler, if you, I don't know if any of the testers are here, if you have to do API testing, you might find yourself checking a lot of, using Fiddler a lot. That will be, not possibly here, we don't use it on the platform here. However, you might find that yourself working in an organization or being with an organization where we're looking at some API endpoints, and there was a lot of checks even after you've done initial checks on the front end of the application. Fiddler would give you detailed and clear. It's been so long. It's been ages I used it. It will give you detailed traffic analysis, what exactly is going on. It also helps you to detect any sort of errors that is going on in the application. So let's quickly get on to do some hands-on security testing. I'm not going to be doing that for you. I would put those test data inputs in the chat for you, but you would need to share your screen and I'll give you the URL to use. So any questions before I stop this, and then we can continue with that part of tonight's class. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
Nmap. What are we going to categorize Nmap in all these tools?
When you use the Nmap when you're also trying to do your traffic analysis, like you're checking, you're trying to find your IP, maybe locate an IP address and all that. So Nmap is uh, I'm trying to find. We have vulnerability, we have scanning, to Nmap would fall within the network analysis tool, I believe. It's
So I was
yeah,
thinking,
because you need
I was thinking it was part of Nesvers and Open VAS categories.
it's a network mapper. You see that word Nmap is a network mapper. So
Yes.
it will fall within that if you try to scan a network or trying to gather information, when you're doing pen testing, there's something they call reconnaissance. So you're trying to gather information. So it can be a reconnaissance to, it helps you to, like I said earlier, it helps you if you are trying to locate a device on the network, it will help you to find the device. It help you identify the device, it help you identify the services that is running on the network, that kind of a thing. Yeah,
Okay.
but it's a very powerful tool as well as as it's I want to say I want to say that it's used cuts across a lot of activities or action or tasks that you would do. in a within if you are having to do anything around security. That is what I can share about it. You can use it to detect devices. Use it when you want to scan a port. Of course, if you're scanning, of course it will help you identify what port the device is on. Okay. So all those kind of little things. I would just encourage, like you've asked me right now, I had to start, okay, NMAP, yes, I've used it. So the things that I've seen NMAP do are what I'm saying. Of course, you can go on and read up about them later. And of course, you can verify and even come back and challenge what I've said. You understand? But the things I've seen NMAP do, with the little time I've used NMAP, that's what I've shared with you. So it still falls, but its use cuts across quite a number of things that you would do within the security setting. And is an open source tool. You can pick it up and run with it, make your discoveries and all that. Wale, I see you here. Good, good. We thought you weren't going to be able to join us.
Maybe he's at work or
Okay,
can
okay, it's just
can only
okay.
listen or cannot speak.
Okay. All right. Can you share your screen? I think let me give you opportunity to share. I'll just send you what to do in the chat. I'll need to